Hey everyone, Avros here, back again with the Final Fantasy XII game challenge with Final Fantasy V, and we can see here a very familiar looking character in this last section of the Interdimensional Rift. And yes indeed, that's Gilgamesh, back one last time. So when he was sent into the Void, he ended up here in the Interdimensional Rift, and Gilgamesh doesn't recognize us, as he says, have at the vile beast, so here we go with our last Gilgamesh fight. So, he's just basically going to attack at us. We're not really going to do anything to him other than try and mug him and get that Genji shield to the next piece of the Genji equipment that we need to get. And then we're going to lay into him, do a bit of damage until he remembers who we are. Relying on Lena here to do that with her setup. Shouldn't need too much more than that to get Gilgamesh. And as he says, wait a minute, Avros? Zound, this is no beast, just Avros. You should have said so from the start. Oh, I don't like it here. Creepy monsters lurk around every corner, and I can't find the way out. I'm gonna break down! So, anyway, how did you get here? Or rather, how does one exit? And then we let him know, yeah, just go the way we came in. Ah, I see. Let us egress post-haste. Say, afterwards, let's say we have a few spectacular adventures, just us five. Oh yes, that whole saving the world thing for me. If you make it out safely... Ha, no ifs about it. I'm certain we'll meet again. And at that time, I hope you'll consider me a... never mind, haha! Hasta la bye-bye! And, Gilgamesh leaves. So, Gilgamesh ended up with the rift. We reminded him who we are, and he decided to leave. So he's gone, and we're going to press on to finding Exdeath. And up next, the last demon of the rift, Necrophobe, who says he will not give us the light that we saw him hiding inside. So the fight against Necrophobe is a bit of an interesting one. We want to make sure we have all of our defenses up. Mighty Guard, a great way of making sure everyone has those. And then the big thing with Necrophobe is taking out his barriers there that he's got. So he's got the 4 little mobs with him, barriers, and says that he's achieved invincibility with them, and do we really think we can defeat him? So obviously he's giving us a hint there, the barriers need to die first before we can do anything about Necrophobe. And go ahead and use Golem and Carbuncle, make ourselves completely defensible there. No physical damage will get through, no reflections of spells will get through. Anything that's an AoE spell we can use on him is really our best course of action here. So Kryl, being a time mage, is going to resort to Meteor there, get that random damage on the targets. And once the barriers are down, then we can deal with Necrophobe himself. So we're going to rely on dual casting with our summons and do everything we can to take them out. And Lena's going to rapid fire here. You can see every time she hits Necrophobe, it just does a quick animation there, which means that it's not actually doing any damage. It will also do that against enemies that are dead. So, like, if Lena hits a couple of times, the enemy is already dead. The remaining attacks, if it's the only enemy on the battlefield, will go at that increased rate. And, yeah, that's pretty much how that's going to work. And, Bahamut here, showing off his amazing damage output here. Summoners are ridiculous in this game at later stages, once you get all the powerful summons. And Bahamut, as you can see, just took out 3 of the barriers. And even though we've got the Reflect up from Carbuncle, and all the other stuff from Mighty Guard that we've got, basically Avros here resorting to using White Wind as a heal, and Kryl gonna mimic him there to make sure everyone stays at full health. And Lena's going to go ahead and take out the last barrier, and now he can deal with Necrophobe himself. Now that all the barriers are gone, he's no longer invincible, as he put it, and we're able to do what we can. So, as he says, my invincible barriers, you know, they obviously weren't invincible because we could deal damage, and he's like, have a taste of my true power, it's all you can eat. And then hits us with Flash, which would blind us, but, I mean, everyone's all set up there with Reflect and all the other things there, so it does nothing to us. And Avros is gonna lay into him and try and mug Necrophobe for his items. And we're going to go ahead with rapid fire and do as much damage to Necrophobe here as we can, so we can finish him up and end this fight. So the reason why we want to fight Necrophobe here is that beating him does actually unlock a save point. As we'll see at the end of this fight, there will be a save point here where Necrophobe is, and he's right around the corner from the next sort of bosses we need to fight, and including Exdeath is just nearby here as well. And Necrophobe, taking that same weakness as all the other demons of the Rift, they're very weak to holy magic, and Krile going to keep hitting those max damage hits there, and he's going to lay into the party with stuff like Hurricane, trying to drop us to single-digit health, and stuff like Vacuum Wave to do lots of damage. And we're just going to keep retaliating into Necrophobe until this fight is over. Or Gilgamesh is going to show up, and that's mildly concerning. So Gilgamesh lets us know he's made it. Made what? Why hello there. Surprised to see me? A bit. Ha, as if I just left you in the lurch. I'd look like a jerk for all of history. Thought I'd let that happen? As if. So Gilgamesh has shown up to help us with the fight against Necrophobe. And Necrophobe doesn't want to, you know, deal with Gilgamesh. And the rest of us, he's like, you can die first, Gilgamesh. So, finally, Gilgamesh is going to make good on his promise. Oh, really? Just try it, Baldy. And you can't even hold a birthday candle to the blazing flame of my winning spirit. So yeah, Gilgamesh has finally decided to join the party, and we're going to steal his Genji armor, which is the last piece of the Genji gear there in this fight. It's the only place you can get it. And now we've got a party of 5 people. We've got Gilgamesh backing us up, and now we can finish off Necrophobe and listen to the wonderful battle at the Big Bridge for the this fight here. And so Gilgamesh says, Krile, your grandfather, he was a pretty strong guy. And Krile remembers Galuf here. Gilgamesh. And you, Faris! You must fall in love or something. And try acting a little like a woman, if you still know how. And Faris takes a bit of offense there to what Gilgamesh is saying. And Gilgamesh goes ahead and heals himself up there, keeps himself healthy, while Necrophobe continues to lay into him, because he is actually trying to kill Gilgamesh first here. Lena! Always so selfless towards animals. Never lose that pure heart. So Gilgamesh is going full anime here and extolling the virtues of the entire party. And Avros. I wanted to fight you one more time. Mano a mano. You have admirable companions. I envy you. Gilgamesh. And Gilgamesh keeping himself topped up there, healing himself. And if you've ever seen an anime or a lot of very tropey stuff, it happens in video games a lot as well, you can kind of get the gist of what's about to happen here. Necrophobe told him to die, so Gilgamesh just snorts derisively and says, I believe that's my line, and blows himself up with self-destruct. And kills Necrophobe. It's not actually possible to beat Necrophobe without Gilgamesh doing that. He is technically invincible no matter how much damage you do, and then eventually Gilgamesh will show up and help you in the fight. And that's it. That's the end of Gilgamesh. And after Necrophobe, we go over here to this trapped treasure chest, where we get an introduction to our next superboss, with some more footage here from his appearance in Final Fantasy XIV. This giant dragon here. This is the Elder Dragon, excuse me, Shinryu that was mentioned previously in the Ancient Tome, and there's not too much we need to go over as far as his attacks go. He hits with a lot of AoE for a huge amount of damage with stuff like Tsunami, and when he gets close to dead, he uses an attack called Zombie Breath to turn everyone into undead, which means you can't heal them anymore and they're no longer able to be revived. So, all that being said, it turns out there's a very, very easy way to beat Shinryu, and that's to do what Avros just did there and mix what's called Bacchus Cider using the Chemist ability. There is some other ways to do it. Use white magic to also cast a spell by the name of Berserk. And what happens when you do that is the enemy gets berserked, the same as what the Berserker does, and can only use physical attacks. Now, it doesn't always work on every boss, but it does work on Shinryu, and so now Shinryu can't use any of his abilities, he's stuck with only physically attacking. What does this mean? Well, the Berserk makes him do insane damage, as you can see there, Lena getting one shot for 9,310, but we have ways to make it so that Shinryu can't hit the party. So what we're going to do here is take advantage of some stuff like Goliath Tonic to double Avros's health, to make him a lot more resilient and be able to heal everyone for a lot more, and then use things like Arise from our white mages to get people up if they do happen to die, and then use a little spell called Blink. Now, what Blink is going to do, as you'll see here when it gets cast on Avros, is he gets some invisible clones behind him. And those invisible clones mean he can't actually be hit by physical attacks until all of the clones are gone. So what happens now, Shinryu tries to hit, and as you see there it misses, and one of the clones disappears. Now with dual cast and white magic, this becomes a very easy process of making sure that everyone in your party never loses Blink, and that everyone else deals as much damage to Shinryu as possible. So what's going to happen here? We're going to rely upon stuff that we have access to, like Mix or Blue Magic, to use things like White Wind, and everything else we can take advantage of here, including this attack that Avros is about to do here. And once we get the mix all sorted, make sure we have the right mix, and we've got it all sorted now. We're going to go with Succubus Kiss, drain him for 2200 HP, and heal Avros, making sure he can stay healthy, and rely upon Lena's Rapid Fire here to do as much damage to Shinryu as possible, and eventually Shinryu will die. So, yeah, this is a pretty cheesy way to take out a super boss, but, I mean, so's the Thunderblade tactic I used against Omega. The thing with this is that you really don't want to fight Shinryu normally unless you're really prepared for it, and as I was starting to find out when I got towards the end of my playthrough here, my party's quite low level for actually finishing the game, so this became actually kind of a struggle to take on Shinryu in any other way, and so relying upon this Berserk strategy was the best outcome I could hope for. So yeah, Shinryu, like I said, has a lot of big AoE attacks. He does a lot of damage. As you can tell, his attack stat is huge based on that 9,000 he hit for under Berserk. And his magic damage is a lot. He has very high defenses as well, so you don't really damage him too massively a lot of the time. Like, you can see here with Bahamut, it's only hitting for 2600, whereas on some of their previous enemies you would have seen it's hitting for almost 4000. So you really need to be very well prepared for fighting Shinryu, no matter what strategy you go with. Even this strategy, you need to really have dual cast as well as Blink all ready to go, because, I mean, if you don't, and you don't have access to being able to put Blink up on 2 targets, if you get very unlucky, and you're not using things like Haste or Hermes Sandals to keep the haste up from the start of combat, then this becomes a very bad fight very quickly. That also being said, despite me coming into this fight well prepared for how Shinryu was going to act, I made a huge mistake just a moment ago in this fight, which was putting Holy Sword up on Lena. So you're going to see why this is a mistake when it comes around to her turn again and she uses Rapid Fire, but this was not a smart decision at all. I should have stuck to just having nothing on the swords, or putting something like Flare on, which is non-elemental, to try and improve her damage. And, yeah, this was a very, very big problem with this fight against Shinryu. I actually made this take a hell of a lot longer than it needed to, and making sure that you keep all the blinks and everything up becomes much more tricky when people are running out of mana from spamming incredibly powerful spells like Faris there, using her ability to summon Bahamut twice and running herself out of mana. This time when she's actually summoned Bahamut here twice was actually the next turn in her quick chain, where I just used Mime to mimic her previous turn and do the double summon again. So here comes the rapid fire, and those green numbers there mean that Shinryu absorbs holy damage, meaning I just healed him for a ton of health. So yeah, big mistake there on my part. Definitely made this take a hell of a lot longer than it needed to, and made this a pretty serious blunder. So some other cool mixes we'll get going here, I think is what I'm about to do. You can double mix Dark Matter to get the attack Shadow Flare, which does a lot of damage for a mix ability, so 2600 is pretty decent, seeing as Bahamut's Mega Flare is only hitting around the same, and it's also mimicable without using up any items, so someone with more magic power like Faris hitting for 3400 with that one. And yeah, we fix up the issue with the Holy Spellblade and move on with the with our lives, and get on with beating the last part of Shinryu here. And he is the last super boss in this game. There's only really 2 they put in. The Game Boy Advance version, which I'm playing, also has another super boss that I didn't go and fight because I have other games, this 12-game challenge to move on to, and it requires you to do a lot of grinding of different jobs and go and do an entire side quest dungeon that was added in the GBA game that has a boss at the end of it that is much, much harder than Shinryu and Omega, and a hell of a lot harder than Exdeath, as well as along the way having to fight upgraded versions of Shinryu and Omega, which are not worth fighting, and your prize for doing that and getting to the end of that entire dungeon and beating the final boss is unlocking one more job that you can't get any other way other than beating the game to get into this dungeon any further than what you can initially when it unlocks, and that job is the Necromancer job, which makes your person using an undead, and then if they use a particular attack to kill enemies, they learn incredibly powerful spells. But by that point, you've beaten every difficult boss in the game, and you can't go back and fight Exdeath over again. So what's the point? So yeah, I didn't go and fight any of those optional super bosses in the post-game content, and Avros there making a mix to restore all of Faris's MP with some ethers, so we can finish off the last of this fight, and move on to our goal at the end of this, which is to fight Exdeath and finish the game. So Shinryu there destroyed, and we get the Dragon Seal, as well as inside the chest was Ragnarok. So as you'll see here when we get down to it, the Dragon Seal, again, very similar to the Omega Badge. It's just an item you get in your inventory where it's like, hey, you beat this hard super boss. As it says, signifying the valor of one who has slain the strongest of all dragons, the dragon that was immune to the damage of all 12 of the legendary weapons, and the Ragnarok, a sword with runes of the gods carved into its surface, which can be used for Spellblade. It hits really hard, it's a very good sword, so definitely worth picking up if you think you can take on Shinryu. And in the next episode, we will take on Exdeath and finish up Final Fantasy V, ready to move on to 6. So thank you all for watching, and catch you in the next episode.